Shalom. First and foremost, I want to give all praises to the Heavenly Father, Yahweh, Bahasham, Yahweh Shai, Bahasham, Rachakwarash. Double honors to the apostles, the bishops, and the elders at Great Millstone who rule well. Peace and salutations, as always, to the elect. All right, and this is In the News, all right, where we watch prophecy, linking the things that we see worldwide to the Holy Scriptures, so that the faithful elect can be rooted in the knowledge, wisdom, and understanding, and more importantly, the faith, all right, of Yahweh Bashem Yahweh Shai, all right, which through the Holy Spirit we believe in what's written in the volume of the book, all right, so that through this grace period, all right, we can believe and have faith as we walk through this straight gate as things are getting tighter. All right, we see the powers that be, the elites of this world, all right, are pushing out all kinds of confusion, all right, with these shootings. Trump is so-called being targeted, which they're saying he wasn't. Okay, you're seeing, over in the East, explosions. See, these are all of the effects, all right, that are tied to end-time prophecy, whether it be the left hand at work, working their magic, all right, or whether ultimately these things are happening natural. All right, it all fulfills prophecy, which the man of sin is at work. There's a lot of deception. There's a lot of wickedness. There's a lot of enchantments going on. So as the believers, all right, in the gospel, all right, which ultimately has been given to the apostles, the prophets who were here in the earth, all right, members of the 144,000 who have the new song, ultimately that is what we stick to, amongst all of this confusion. We do have, all right, something that we can, navigate all of these issues through. And some of these things we ignore because the so-called, white man, the elites of this world, all right, they're just throwing any and every manner of confusion out there to keep you distracted from what's really happening. All right, Diddy's back in the news, all right, which to hell with that nigga, all right. The Heavenly Father is going to destroy him. All right, he's wicked, you see, but Esau Edom's using him as a pawn, to distract you as well, as he's getting caught left and right doing all of this wickedness. They're telling you that, Haitians are eating your cats and ducks, which everywhere you look, Esau Edom, he's creating a boogeyman, he's creating an enemy, when the true enemy of life is him. As it says in the book of Habakkuk, the 2nd chapter, he is as death and could never be satisfied, man. You see? So as you can see here, we have an article. All right. Can someone explain why there is a new food recall every day? See? Cantaloupes, lunch meat, eggs, all right, even water. All right, even water. Warnings, all right, on drinking water. FDA issues warnings to water company over mold contamination in infant formula producer, all right, lacking chronobacter testing. Okay, they were just saying there was some type of chemical in baby food. There's chemicals everywhere. All right, there's warnings everywhere you look. As you can clearly see, the food system is being collapsed. All right, and this is one of the means of bringing a squeeze to bring people to their knees, all right, and bring about that NWO, that new world order. Now, cantaloupes, lunch meat, eggs, many fruits, and many things people, eat on a day-to-day basis are now being recalled, all right, on a large scale. Meat, all right. These are all plagues associated with the end time, all right? We know what the scriptures say. Let's get that in the book of Ezekiel 4:13. It says, and Yahweh said, even thus shall the children of Israel eat their bread defiled among the Gentiles where I drive them. This word defiled, all right, and bread doesn't just go into literal bread, All right. But food, what we eat, it's all defiled. Okay. And this is a reason why it's hard to stay healthy. It's a reason why it's hard to, stay, keep your weight down. All right. All these ailments, it all is associated with what's in the food. All right. And we have a complete demon. All right. One who threw away the birthright, one who hates Jacob, one who hates Yahweh Bashim Yahushai, one who hates natural order, has control over your food. We have heathen, all right, who are in cahoots to take us down as a nation and to wipe our name out with control over our food. So what do you think they're going to do to it? The word is tamah, unclean, impure, ethically and religiously, ritually. All right. So the things that we're eating, technically, all right, are unclean because of the way that they were sacrificed. If it's an animal, what they put into it, the chemicals associated with it. You see, this is another reason to call on Yahweh Bashim Yahushai to set up the kingdom of heaven, man, because not knowing what's in your food, having to read the back of labels, all right, which is a clear indicator we're not in the new covenant. All right, these are signs that you're a slave. These are signs that you're not, all right, in your kingdom. Okay, when you look at our forefathers, Job, Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, they knew what was in their food. Okay, they took care of the land, all right, that they owned. Okay, pretty much according to the ways that the Lord requires. Now we live in a situation where these heathen have no regard for Yahweh Bashim Yahushai. Let's get that in Isaiah, the 24th chapter. So even when you're eating lawful, so say, all right, we're still missing the mark. But that was a part of the curse that the Heavenly Father put on us. This is the book of Isaiah 24:4. It says, the earth mourneth and fadeth away. The world languishes and fadeth away. The haughty people of the earth do languish. Okay, everything's in a dead state. There's no life. All right, if you're, 70s, 80s, 90s, baby, you miss those days. You're looking at the times before you, like things are different. The food is different. Things have always been defiled, but we're living in a situation now where this man is trying to literally take us out. Okay, because according to the Georgia Guidestones, okay, they want population at a certain number, all right, before they can really implement that NWO, because it'll be easier to implement it with less people. All right, so if you've been looking around, another end time token is people just dropping, all right, going back to the spirit world, right? And that juice has a lot to do with it. Every time you look up, people, everybody is just dropping DEAD. Okay, this is all a part of the plan. Now it says, the earth is also defiled under the inhabitants thereof, which points to the rulers of this world. See, that's the true problem with this earth, is how it's being managed and ruled. See, because they have transgressed the laws, changed the ordinance, and broken the everlasting covenant, the land Sabbath. Okay, they have broken, all right, what is good. All right, you read Genesis, the first chapter, it says, and it was good. It talked about all of the creation and how it was good. All right, this devil and these heathen have went out of their way, all right, to disregard what is good and to set up their own versions of it. And it's leading to pollution, sickness, death. See? And the earth is fighting back. It says, therefore hath a curse devoured the earth. And you can feel it in the air that the earth is under a curse. It's not happy. Okay? It says, and they that dwell therein are desolate. The people are desolate, man, lacking. They're lacking the vital nutrients that is supposed to be in the food, right? Therefore, the inhabitants of the earth are burned and few men left. And this is what it's going to lead to, a great destruction, man. Okay? Now, going back to this article, it says, if it seems like there is a new food recall, okay, every week, you're not imagining it. All right. If you're paying attention, deli meats cucumbers, frozen chicken, okay, a cattle. There's cattle plagues, which is something that happened in ancient Egypt. Apple juice. It feels like there's always a new safety advisory making headlines. Most recently, the FDA issued a cantaloupe recall in 5 states, all right, due to potential salmonella contamination, as well as an egg recall in 9 states that has sickened 65 people. And let's not forget, all right, August cucumber recall. See, cucumbers. And these are things that are supposed to be healthy, okay? Cucumbers are recalled in 31 states following a massive salmonella outbreak. Okay, so is this being done by design? We believe so through the spirit, because they're collapsing the food system, and pretty soon, all right, everything will be deemed, all right, uneatable, okay? And they're going to come with those new foods that they've been warning about. Okay, worms, bugs, see? And this is all a plan to save the earth. Okay, this is all a plan to bring the earth to what is called net zero. You have this green agenda. We'll tap into a little bit of that, but it says these latest incidents are a part of a broader trend that's leaving many consumers worried about food safety in the U.S. So amongst economic worries, okay, the presidential candidate worries, okay, now you have food worries. You got the people being brought over here from the border, worries about them. Now you got worries about your cat getting eaten by a Haitian. These are the things that they're throwing out in the news, okay, to keep the people on edge. Mass shooters. See, the president is not safe. Okay? Secret Service said it's only so much they can do. All right? Meaning, no matter where you at, you could be in the threat of imminent death. All right? Again, they're setting up a system to where they can what? All right, call for peace and safety, man. Okay? And the food is a part of that. Okay? It says, according to Newsweek, a recent survey found that public trust in federal government's ability to ensure food safety has reached record lows just prior to the polling. Okay? The FDA has issued 19 recalls in June 2024. That's just in June. Okay? You can look up how many food recalls have there been in 2024 alone and put it on the comment board if you can find it. But either way, we know we've been seeing a lot, okay? Meat, So why is the big surge in recalls? Oftentimes, allergens will be the most common reason due to products being mislabeled or even unlabeled. Another significant factor is the consolidation within the food industry. Fewer companies are now responsible for a wider range of products. And this is what they're doing. Okay, they're pretty much limiting your access to food by shutting down, meat markets were getting burned down. Remember all of that. All of these things were happening right before your eyes. Remember about 2 years ago or a year ago, over the last 4 years, I'll say, all right, food production companies were being burnt down, closed down. Okay, the farmers are being shut down, and your access to food is becoming non-existent. And when you look up, it's only going to come from certain, all right, corporations who have control over everything, which that's what they want. They're going to gather and heap all people to themselves by having control of all of the resources, all right, and setting up a system to where your access to it is limited if you don't comply. See? All right, and we'll go back to this article, but I wanted to play this. All right, we already got that. Water, yeah, water. Yeah, even Fiji water was recalled. Let's look that up. Fiji water recall. 1.9 million Fiji water bottles All right, sold through Amazon, recall. See? Everything's polluted. And this all points to a wicked rulership. Okay? Top scientists sound the alarm. Dead human beings being pumped into the food supply. And see, we're at the point now where it's just time to get up out of here. And the Lord ain't going to give us full understanding of what's happening until we get those new bodies. Because if we have full understanding of what we were really eating in these bodies in this time, we drive ourselves crazy. We go crazy. But now they're telling you that there's dead humans. All right, we kind of had a clue that these devils, when we say that this man is the devil, all right, a lot of you just think, oh, this is just a little pet devil. No, he's seriously wicked. The word devil means deceive. He's a deceiver. Okay? The liquefied remains of dead corpses are being quietly and deceitfully pumped into the U.S. food supply, according to the testimony of several scientists. Okay? In 2019, human composting was legalized in the state of Washington in Bill 5001 entitled Concerning Human Remains, that legalized the natural organic reduction of human remains, yada, yada, yada. Natural News went into that. I remember that. I believe Instagram. Let's see what this is.
End is near. Check out this death chamber, this washing machine. They call it aquamation, where they liquefy the dead and then dump the remains down the drain to be recycled into the municipal water supply. And so people are drinking it, they're showering in it, they're doing their laundry in it, and this is happening in most states across the country. In most major cities, they're recycling dead people and feeding it to the living. What does that mean exactly? And they're grinding up the bones into powder. They call this calcium phosphate, which is going to be used for food processing, undoubtedly. Maybe in your vitamins. And so what are the implications when people start eating dead people, like cannibalism? Is there going to be kuru running around out there? Mad cow disease? What about in a spiritual sense? What is that like when you're eating and drinking dead people? Of course, they're spraying this on the food supply. Irrigation. They're using dead people as compost.
That's enough. All right. And you look on the back of something that says natural flavors. But I wanted to play a portion of this video or podcast with Mike Adams from Natural News. Let's listen. All right. It's called Putin Warns America to Stop Provoking World War. All right. But listen to what he's talking about here.
Now we've got a second report for you here that I think you may find interesting, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to put that report after the interview with Michael Yon. So we've got about an hour, maybe a little bit more, of a conversation with Michael Yon here. Might be an hour and 15 minutes, I'm not sure, about cannibalism. You need to hear this because cannibalism is exactly what's coming if we don't change course. They're going to not just eat the cats and dogs and geese and ducks in the park. They're going to start eating children across these sanctuary cities and these places where some of these invaders have been deliberately placed. As the food supply collapses, I'm talking about. If Kamala stays in power and there are price controls, engineered famine.
Even if Trump gets in there, this is where it's all leading to starve out the people. Famine, all right, is on the horizon. And that's a big part of end time prophecy. As you can see, they're killing the food supply. Okay. And we know that they're telling you that you're going to be eating bugs. So, as a matter of fact, all you have to, this website goes into it. Let's see. There's a few articles. This site. Yeah, leading U.S. meat producer to focus on insects and bugs after partnership with WEF. All right. Anyone who doesn't want to eat bugs is anti-Sem. Nicolas Cage promotes eating bugs. All right. And this is what is tied to this whole net zero agenda. All right. But many people are going to be starved out as a form of judgment. All right. Which is what he's going into. We'll go back to this.
There's going to be cannibalism. Now, if we can stop that, I think if Trump is elected, then obviously that's a different course. And I don't think we end up seeing the food collapse.
See, he's still, he brings out some good information. Their own tongues falling upon themselves. But as you can see, he still has the hope that Trump is somehow going to save them from all of these particular, disparities. And he's not, okay?
But if Kamala gets in, you can count on it. In fact, Michael Yan says here there is essentially a 100% chance that you're going to see cannibalism in America if the current regime stays in power. So let's go to this interview with Michael Yan, and then we'll come back with a special report, and then finally today's sermon on the other side of that. Welcome to part one of my two-part interview with Michael Yan. And in this part, we're focused on cannibalism, an astonishing story. It should be made into a Netflix.
And you think this sounds crazy and that we're being crazy? Well, cannibalism is in the Bible. Okay, there's judgments where the Lord starved Israel out, and they were forced to eat their babies. That's in the curses that Jake would eat their babies. As a matter of fact, if you think we just making this stuff up and we're being fear mongers, y'all don't understand what the Lord is getting ready to bring to this place, man. Deuteronomy 28. Let's see here. Yeah, she shall eat them in one of all things. That's one of the curses. She's going to be evil towards her young that cometh out between her feet, towards her children. She shall eat them for one of all things secretly in a siege. And a siege is ultimately when the enemy, puts a camp around you, all right, and pretty much shuts off things going in and out, leading you to, basically starve out. This is what they're getting ready to do. And when that happens, people are going to then wish that they had listened, man. What the Bible says about cannibalism. Top 10 verses about cannibalism. Oh, goodness gracious, we got to get out of here. You can't just be here. Jeremiah 19:9, and I will make them eat the flesh of their sons and daughters. These are judgments the Lord, have brought in times past. All right, now we're in the time, pursuing to Daniel, the 12th chapter, where, a time like never before. And it's not the best thing to think about, all right, but it's the right thing to think about, to remain fearful of what Yahweh B'Shem Yahushua can do, all right, and what's coming.
Series or something of Michael Yan tracking down a world famous cannibal who bragged about eating children and especially liked to eat human fingers. And Michael Yan and I talk about the practice of cannibalism, why it still takes place in many cultures around the world. And it's not always about hunger, by the way. In fact, rarely is it about hunger. It's other reasons.
Well, it's getting ready to be about hunger as well here, because the elites, let's get Revelation 6 and 8. And I looked, and behold, a pale horse, and his name that sat on him was Death. What does it say in the book of Habakkuk? Let's get Habakkuk, the 2nd chapter, and the 5th verse. Yea, also because he transgressed by wine his philosophies, all right, which eating, human. That's a part of his philosophy. That's what they do. They do that on the left hand side. All right, and they have people. When you look at how these people are acting, a lot of the stuff in his foods is causing people to turn into zombies too. He transgresseth by wine. He is a proud man, neither keepeth at home, who enlargeth his desire as hell, and is as death, and cannot be satisfied. All right, but gathereth unto him all nations, and heapeth unto him all people. All right, and one of the ways he's going to have all people gathered unto him, all right, is by taking control of the food supply. All right, and all of these atrocities taking place to where people are going to be begging for a solution, man. So you can watch this. We don't have to, look too much into that. We don't have to listen to any more of that. Just listening to it is like, damn. But if you want to check that out, it's on Brighton. All right, this is the name of the website, and you could just Google this right here, okay? Which his podcasts are pretty good, some pretty good information. But these are the times that we're in, all right, where, as you can see here, Gil Bates predicts novel superbugs, okay, will reduce, all right, global pop by tens of millions. See, they want a lot of people going. Let's read this again. Revelation 6 and 8. And I looked, and behold, a pale horse, and the name that sat on him was Death. He is as death and cannot be satisfied. And hell followed him. Hell on earth follows him. That's why they're called the border of wickedness, man. Let's get that in the book of Malachi. Okay. I believe that's in Malachi, the first chapter. Malachi 1 and 4. Whereas Edom said, we are impoverished, but we will return and build the desolate places. And that's what they've done. Right? They've rebuilt the Western Roman Empire. They've rebuilt to a point where now they don't think they're ever going to be taken down again. Thus said the Lord of hosts, they shall build, but I will throw down, and they shall call them the border of wickedness, and the people against whom the Lord have indignation. So wherever they go, wickedness follows, man. This is completely out of order what we see going on in the planet Earth. But again, power was given over unto him over the fourth part of the earth, okay, which speaks to America as well, all right, to kill with the sword, all right, because the biggest mass death is going to come over here, and with hunger and with death and with the beasts of the earth. So he's going to be here, he's going to have power to kill with the sword and with hunger and with death. Hunger. Let's look up the word hunger. The word hunger limos, okay, scarcity of harvest, famine. Scarcity of harvest, and famine. And as you can see, farming is becoming obsolete. Okay, farming is being attacked because they have to get this whole global WARMING under control. This is why they have this plan for net zero, which is a set of strategies to reduce hunger, all right, by giving people access to food through, all right, artificial foods, all right, and tackle sea change by making the food system more sustainable. The plan aims to transform food systems, all right, from nature to artificial, right, to capture 1.5 gigatons of greenhouse gas emissions annually. And what's adding to, the earth warming up and all these things? Nature, cattle, okay, the human beings, being able to travel around and, gather abroad and eat and just do as they will. Okay, it says the plan includes sustainable agriculture, transitioning from regenerative, all right, transitioning to regenerative agricultural practices, all right, transforming from farming, all right, which is becoming absolute or obsolete, all right, to their, let's look up the word regenerative. Characterized by regeneration, all right, renewed, a new process, man. Reducing food waste, creating new markets and opportunities to reduce food waste and loss, circular food economy, empowering all stakeholders to play their role in circular food economy. And it sounds, when you listen to it, it sounds good, but the plan really is from, when you look up the farm to fork, okay, situation, man, these devils got a whole lot planned, man. They're wicked. Climate smart agriculture, working with farmers to optimize sourcing, switch to renewables, and practice regenerative agriculture. So you're switching from the ancient way of farming to the new way, which is all centered around wickedness, man. It's a snare, but it's going to be presented as a means to help the earth. Okay. Logistics, carbon footprint. See? Carbon footprint. Optimizing recipes to develop new ingredients with a lower carbon footprint. New ingredients with a lower carbon footprint. Okay, and what is your carbon footprint? Okay. A carbon footprint is the total amount of greenhouse gases, including carbon dioxide and methane, that are generated by our actions. So right now they're saying people, living the lives that they've been able to live and eating the foods that they've been able to eat, and nature itself is causing the earth to heat up, all right, at a point where we won't have an earth if we don't stop this. Okay, you have the whole Malthusianism. All right, and this is what they're talking about at the World Economic Forum, where there's not enough resources in the earth to sustain all of the people. So a lot of people must go. We have to change the food supply. We have to do this. And it's all tied to the charagma, because that's how you're going to be tracked and traced, all right, in this new world. Okay, to save the world, we need to limit how much you can have, what you can have. All right, limit your meat consumption, limit this. We need to come with new meat. Okay? This is what they're talking about, all right, when they're talking about, hold up, I thought I had it. When they're talking about now you're going to be eating bugs. Okay? They're trying to do away with meat. Schools in the Netherlands beginning to serve mealworms and bugs to children to combat G-warming. WEF endorsed bugs, and this is not medical information. We're in the news, right? WEF endorsed bugs and insects forced to children in 1,000 Australian schools. And they're starting to secretly put it in the foods over here. This is why you're seeing things that say natural flavoring. All right, 9 times out of 10, there's bugs in the candy, the bars you're eating, the health bars, the food, it's all fake. See? There you go. In the GR, can't say this name, mega companies are quietly and deceitfully adding bugs to our foods. Okay? So this is a real agenda. Okay, this is a real agenda, man. It's not a game, all right? And see, this is having control of the food is one way, all right, to really, bring the people into your agenda. You can look it up. Biden says G-warming is a bigger threat than nuclear war. See, they're even blaming that on the refugees crossing. UK study says breathing is bad for the environment. There's too many people breathing. Hillary Hinton, you see that, claims G-warming is killing 500,000 people a year. No, Edomites and your wicked policies are killing millions of people a year. You are as death, man. Gil Bates is funding the deforestation of 70 million acres to reduce G-warming. So this is a real thing. Okay? So to fix it, they're going to set up this new system where you're going to be tracked, traced, and what you have access to, it's all going to be changed, man. Your carbon footprint, all right? Your let's see if we can go here. Your transportation, all right? Your electricity, how much of these things you have access to, how much you use, all right? It's all going to be tracked and traced. You know, traveling, all of that will be limited. Okay? Let's see here. How? Cattle can contribute to global warming by emitting methane. So you see, nature is now being blamed. All right? They passing too much gas. They're breathing too much. They're burping too much. Cattle is the problem. All right? Let's see how humans add to G warming. Burning fossil fuel, cutting down, let's see, human contribute to global warming by increasing the amount of greenhouse gases into the atmosphere, which increases greenhouse effect. Human activities that contribute to global warming include burning fossil fuels, oil, natural gas, drive, But, I don't want to get too deep off into that, but this is ultimately where it's at. Okay? They're getting ready to take out, all right, and have through their, doctrines and philosophies, they're going to have the right, the go-ahead to take billions of people out, man. But as it said, tens of millions of people are set to perish at the hands of mysterious superbugs before 2050, according to a Gil Bates study. According to the study, the vast majority of the 10 millions of victims will be elderly people, and they put all of these terms on why people are going back to the spirit world, but we know a big reason why a lot of people are going back to the spirit world is that juice. It says mirroring the results of the C-pan, which almost exclusively killed off the elderly, all right, infirm. All right. Now we know what was really taking out the elderly, right? But we're gonna let that be what that is. So they're warning you that mass death is coming, basically. Okay? And we know, all right, as you read that, what's really taking a lot of people out. Anyway, let's move along. Hillary Clinton says Americans who believe in conspiracy theories must be jailed before November. All right? So if you believe in so-called conspiracy theories, you're going to be rounded up because it's becoming more and more clear what they're doing and how they're going about it. So they're going to, outlaw you talking against it. All right? And we always talk about this.
And I don't understand why it's so difficult for the press to have a consistent narrative about how dangerous Trump is. The late, great journalist, Harry Evans, one time said that, journalists should, really try to achieve objectivity. And by that, he said, I mean, they should cover the object. Well, the object in this case is Donald Trump, his demagoguery, his danger to our country and the world, and stick with it,
Right, and people that they can tie to him, all right, are people who believe in conspiracy theories. It's all a setup.
And boosting Trump back in 2016. But I also think there are Americans who are engaged in this kind of propaganda. And whether they should be civilly or even in some cases criminally charged is something that would be a better deterrence because.
Yeah, so these devils, everybody's onto them. So they're setting snares and traps through people like Trump, Elon Musk, and so forth. All right. And these people are completely satanic. Okay. Anyway, the UN's goal for America is to surrender its sovereignty to a global government. All right. And when it says surrender your sovereignty, all right, basically the rights that come with being an American must be surrendered for the greater purpose. And as you can see, the serpent on the pole, because this is that old serpent. Let's get that real quick. It's crazy to think about what these people are doing, but, the need for judging. And we can't hate these people. We can't hate the incarnate of Satan in the planet Earth, as a wise person said to me recently. We can't hate Satan's counterpart in the earth. Jake is scared to say it, man, because a lot of these dudes are sold out, man. See, Revelation 12:9, and it's everything that they're doing. It's a war against what we're saying, because what we're saying exposes their agenda. So there's a lot of pawns they're setting up, okay, to bring blame, like Trump. He's one. Revelation 12:9, and the great dragon was cast out. So Trump brings up conspiracy theories. He talks about the pedo rings. He talks about this. He speaks against the alphabet agenda. But when he got in office, did he outlaw alphabet practices? No. It's all a ploy. These are all talking points that they can tie to particular people who are telling the truth about things, who have a very, very, their causes are real. What they're complaining about are real, all right? But Esau Edom wants to set up a world where truth is outlawed. Again, we always bring this up. All right? So they're getting ready to starve you out, jail you for telling the truth, all right, and just try to set up wickedness in the planet Earth with that charagma at the forefront of it, man. This is Isaiah 59. Let's read it in the NLT, 14. And I just had a bunch of articles and stuff, just bringing it out. Of course, sometimes we're all over the place, but hey, trust us through the Spirit, man. This is all happening. Isaiah 59:14, our courts oppose the righteous, and justice is nowhere to be found. Truth stumbles in the streets, and honesty has been outlawed. See? Honesty is being outlawed. Truth stumbles in the streets. You can't tell the truth here. You're being looked at as crazy. Okay? And the powers that be know, all right, the truth started here in the Americas. People are starting to wake up from the spirit of truth being pushed into the planet Earth. Yea, truth is gone, and anyone who renounces evil is attacked. See, Trump is supposed to be one who renounces evil. Him and Elon Musk, they're supposed to be enemies of the NWO, but they're all snares. They're using Trump as a pawn, as a way, okay, to get to people like us. See? He's a danger to our world. Conspiracy theories are dangerous to our world. So we must fix it. But the old serpent, that old serpent called the devil and Satan, as the scripture says, all right, is coming down with great wrath. the accuser of the brethren. So the UN's goal for America is for it to surrender its sovereignty, so to give up your rights to the greater global government, all right, which some, senators, some, they're divided on this a lot, because a lot of these Americans really believe in what the founding fathers told them. And a lot of the founding fathers of America warned of this very day. Okay? Let's see, what did Thomas Jefferson warn of? Let's see. No, was it him? Yeah. Thomas Jefferson strongly believed in the freedom of speech and warned against the attempts by the government to restrict it. So some of these Americans and, governors and leaders, and Trump, they're supposed to stand for that. This is going to cause a divide and civil unrest. It says, particularly highlighting the danger of laws that could stifle criticism of the government, as seen in his opposition to the Alien Sedition Acts, which criminalized criticizing the government. He famously stated, "Our liberty depends on the freedom of press, and that cannot be limited without being lost." So Thomas Jefferson warned about the times that we're in. See? This is why we're getting ready to see a bunch of civil unrest. Okay? On a rainy day in Washington, D.C., lawmakers joined together to raise the alarm, as expressed by Reggie Littleton, co-founder of Sovereignty Coalition. Yada, yada, yada. In short, the Pact for the Future is an over effort by the Secretary to affirm the UN, all right, should be the primary venue for addressing development. Yep, the Biden-Harris administration, good added, apparently intends to fully support, all right, which they're doing the bidding of the elites, the surrender and compliance of the U.S. to the UN. See, which the UN, okay, as a matter of fact, let's see if I can find that article where the UN, let's see, the UN outlaw particular speech. All right, as you can see here, UN declares war on dangerous sea theories. The world is not secretly manipulated by the global elite because they've been outed. The man of sin has been revealed. So now they're moving in manners that are going to be very, very destructive to the people. All right, and amongst these families that they're saying you're not going to be able to talk about, you can see Mr. Soros and these people, the red shield people, which are small hats, all right, that are a part of the small amount of people who run everything. We call them the elites, but even they're divided. And the state of Israel must not be linked to any alleged conspiracies. See? So this is why their goal for America is for you to surrender your sovereignty. All right? So that ultimately they can have full control. This is why they're collapsing this thing called America. All right? Gil Bates pushes for digital IDs to tackle misinformation and curb free speech. See? They're after free speech for a reason. We go through this all the time, but we're just showing you that don't be surprised when things take a drastic turn left. And all they're just a few there are a few crazy situations, false flags, black swan events away from being able to implement this system. The infrastructure is set up for the MOTB system, which this is going to track, trace. This is going to fix everything. This is going to fix knowing who everybody is, what you're about, having your thoughts on the grid. And this is going to fix the global warming issue, all right, which is destroying the earth. If we're able to track and trace everything and have you on the grid through that, carbon footprint thing. Billionaire Larry Ellison says a vast AI-fueled surveillance system can ensure citizens will be on their best behavior. This is why you're starting to see more and more shootings pop up. The answer to that is going to be more surveillance and eventually surveillance under the skin. Okay? I'm rushing through this because my computer is starting to trip a little bit. Orwellian UN agency declares war on gendered language. All right? The talk of man and woman, boy and girl, all of that is getting ready to be wiped out. Give me 1 second. Just all out war on the Most High and his creation and what he's doing. All right? The system of Satan is being set up in the planet Earth, man. All right, this is why you're starting to see more so-called assassination attempts, more mass shootings, okay? Food collapse, economy collapse. There was another one I had. Yep. 80.4 million Americans are in trouble if the stock market crashes. Nothing but pure hell, all right? Inflation, right? America isn't ready for another war because it doesn't have enough troops, which means a draft is coming. Okay? Tony Blair calls for global agreement on social media speech restrictions. We always go through that. Let's see here. Thousands in Cuba are without water. Bat killing fungus implicated in over 1,000 infant deaths worldwide. Okay? So, we're going to end it here. Lord willing, we'll be back with more. But I got to roll out. Hey, shalom.